Welcome to Libeth. We are reading Japanese fairy tales by Yei Theodora Ozaki, and we have arrived at the first of the two thematic cores that organize everything the collection does. We know the world these stories came from. We know how they are built and who inhabits them and what they argue beneath their surface. Now we go into the specific moral architecture that makes them work as moral documents. The interlocking themes of duty and filial obligation, of kindness rewarded and greed punished, of transformation through suffering, of justice that bypasses official institutions, of the fundamental and irresolvable tension between what the individual wants and what the social order requires. These themes are not decorations. They are the load-bearing walls. Every story in the collection is, at its core, a performance of one or more of these propositions, and the propositions together constitute something close to a complete moral philosophy, not argued in the abstract, but enacted, case by case, through the specific and concrete logic of the tale. The moral economy of these stories is not a metaphor. It is a mechanism. It has inputs and outputs, a logic of exchange that is more precise than any market, more reliable than any court, more universal than any law. You put kindness into the world, not performed kindness, not calculated kindness, kindness that is simply what you are and how you act, and the world, eventually, through whatever intermediary the story provides, returns something of equivalent or greater value. You put greed into the world, specifically the greed that imitates virtue without embodying it, that wants the outcome of goodness without the substance of it, and the world destroys you. This is not a psychological observation about how social reputation works, though it contains that. It is a cosmological claim about the structure of reality, that the universe is not indifferent to the moral quality of human action, that every act enters an account that is eventually settled, and that the settlement is not postponed to an afterlife or deferred to divine judgment day, but is enacted here, in the world of the story, in time, through the specific and concrete mechanism of the supernatural encounter. The concept of the debt of obligation, the weight of received kindness, is the engine running beneath most of these tales, even when it is never named. In the Japanese moral vocabulary, to receive a benefit from another being, human or non-human, animate or inanimate in the modern sense, is to incur an obligation. Not a legal obligation. Something deeper and more binding, a relational fact about your position in the web of exchange that constitutes the social and cosmic order. The fisherman who rescues the turtle does not simply perform a good act. He enters into a relationship of on with the creature, which is simultaneously an agent of the spirit world, and the story is the working out of what that relationship requires and eventually produces. When the Dragon King rewards him, the reward is not a prize for virtue in the abstract. It is the settlement of a specific account. And the precision of the exchange, this specific kindness, this specific reward through this specific intermediary, is the story's way of making the mechanism visible, of showing you how the moral universe is actually constructed. The greedy neighbor who copies the fisherman's actions is attempting to access the mechanism without entering into the relationship that drives it. He performs the external form of the virtuous act, releases the turtle, or helps the old woman or bows at the crossroads, in full knowledge of what the act is supposed to produce. And the story is merciless about this. The imitation of virtue is not virtue, and the universe can tell the difference. The punishment that falls on the imitator is usually not just the withholding of reward, but an active destruction. he receives a mountain of garbage instead of treasure. Or the mallet produces nothing when he shakes it. Or the spirits turn against him in ways that leave him worse off than before he tried. The disproportionality is the point. The attempt to game the moral economy is treated as a worse offense than simple greed, because it demonstrates a full understanding of the rules combined with a fundamental contempt for them. He knows what virtue requires. He simply does not want to actually be virtuous. He wants the reward of virtue without the cost of it. And the universe, in these stories, regards this as the deepest possible violation of the system. The transformation through suffering that organizes the hero's arc is not the same thing as the Western narrative of character development through adversity. The Western version, the protagonist begins flawed, is tested by circumstances that reveal and then overcome those flaws, and emerges from the ordeal improved, assumes that transformation is primarily internal, that the events of the story change the person who undergoes them. The Japanese fairy tale version operates differently. The protagonist is already good before the story begins. They are not transformed by their ordeal in the sense of becoming better than they were. They are refined by it, stripped of everything incidental, reduced to the essential quality that the story is about, and then recognized by the spirit world for what they always were. The suffering is not corrective. It is demonstrative. It shows the universe the substance of the person, in the way that fire shows the purity of gold. You do not become gold by going through fire. But the fire is how the gold is known. This matters enormously for how you read the filial piety tales, which are among the most structurally extreme stories in the collection. When a child accepts suffering, deprivation, or death for the sake of a parent, the story is not asking whether this is a good idea psychologically or socially. It is demonstrating the quality of the child's virtue, its depth, its unconditional character, the degree to which it is not dependent on outcome or reciprocity or anything the world can take away. The child who continues to care for a parent who cannot acknowledge the care, whose sacrifice goes unwitnessed by any human community, whose devotion is given in full knowledge that it may cost everything. This figure is not being presented as a model of healthy attachment. It is being presented as evidence. Evidence that virtue of this quality exists. Evidence that the universe is therefore obligated to respond to it. The suffering is not incidental to the story. It is the proof. The tension between desire and responsibility is the lived version of this argument, the place where the abstract moral economy touches the actual texture of a human life. And the stories are not naive about what this tension costs. The characters who face it most directly, the young person who must choose between the life they want and the obligation they owe, the wife who must stay in a marriage she did not choose, the son who must return to a family he has begun to leave behind, are not shown as cheerfully accepting their obligations. They are shown as feeling the full weight of what they are giving up. The emotion is present. The grief is real. But the choice, in every case, is clear, not because the stories think the choice is easy, but because they think its terms are not negotiable. The social order requires that desire be subordinated to obligation, not because desire is bad, but because a world in which individual desire consistently overrides collective obligation is a world without a social order. And the stories know, from the evidence of the historical periods they emerged from, exactly how bad that world is. The taboo motif, don't look, don't open, don't ask, is the concentrated symbolic form of this argument. The taboo is always a demand that the individual accept a limit, that they restrain the impulse toward full knowledge or full possession, that they live with a constitutive incompleteness in their relationship to the most important thing in their world. And the violation of the taboo is always triggered by exactly the human qualities we would normally consider admirable: curiosity, concern, the desire to fully know and fully understand the person you love. The husband who looks at the crane wife is not breaking the taboo because he is bad. He is breaking it because he loves her, and love in its most intense form cannot tolerate the opacity that the taboo requires. The story is not saying that love is wrong. It is saying that love, when it insists on full possession and full understanding, destroys what it loves. The boundary must remain. The incompleteness must be accepted. This is the cost of existing in a world where the human and the non-human are in contact, and the cost is non-negotiable. The courage of ordinary individuals, the theme that seems most simply heroic and turns out to be the most politically charged, is the story's way of maintaining a moral center in a world where the formal hierarchy does not produce justice. Momotaro, the Peach Boy, does not have supernatural powers because he is noble. He has them because he was born in a different way and raised with different values. The demons he defeats are not defeated by technique or by superior force. They are defeated by the combination of clarity of purpose, coalition building across species lines, and the specific quality of committed moral intention that the Japanese moral vocabulary names as the capacity to act rightly without regard for personal cost. This is not the same as recklessness. It is not the same as the Western heroic tradition's celebration of martial valor. It is something more like integrity in the older sense of the word. Integration, the alignment of action with understanding, the refusal to act in ways that contradict what you know to be true. And the story's claim is that this quality, wherever it appears, regardless of the social status of the person in whom it appears, has a power that the formal hierarchy cannot contain or suppress. What the moral economy of these stories ultimately encodes is not a simple injunction to be good. It is something more structural and more demanding. The claim that the universe is organized in such a way that moral quality is never finally invisible, that the accounts are always being kept even when no human institution is keeping them, and that the settlement, when it comes, is not proportional to human expectation, but to something deeper and less negotiable. These stories were told across centuries of political instability, of corrupt officials and arbitrary lords, in a world where justice through official channels was often simply unavailable. And they kept insisting, in the form that could not be suppressed, that justice existed anyway, somewhere, through some mechanism eventually. In the final video, we move into the other half of that world. The spirit world, the natural world, the world of impermanence and fragile happiness and boundaries between human and non-human that cannot be crossed without cost. That's all for today on Libeth. One new book every week. At least we try.